This is a session devoted to infrastructure. And anytime I've used that word in my reporting, editors would invariably roll their eyes. Not because it wasn't important, but because it covered such a wide swath of resources and public services. John Arensmeyer is with us today to discuss the crucial elements essential for small business to survive and thrive. John has used his long experience as a small business owner to build Small Business Majority into a nationally recognized organization focused on empowering America's entrepreneurs to build a thriving and equitable economy. Small Business Majority is the leading advocate for critical public policy issues facing America's small businesses, particularly access to capital, healthcare, taxes, fair competition, childcare, retirement asset building, and other workforce issues, all infrastructure. In recent years, John has spearheaded the growth of Small Business Majority's Venturize.org portal, providing critical practical resources to our nation's 34 million small businesses and independent self-employed entrepreneurs. Please join me in welcoming John.
Wow, thanks for the warm welcome. I don't normally get applauded by journalists, so I'll take it. I'll take it. And thank you, Kevin and National Press Foundation, for inviting me here to talk about this obviously very, very important issue. I want to share my perspective on the state of small business and to share insights about how you can really integrate coverage of small business into all of your reporting. As Kevin mentioned, first of all, Small Business Majority, we're a national small business organization focused on supporting and advocating for small businesses and also providing access to resources to small businesses across the country. And all of our work is underpinned with research that we do, which I will be referring to periodically as we talk. We have a network of 85,000 small businesses, and equally importantly, we work with 1,500 partner organizations, mostly some form of business support organizations around the country, whether that's local chambers, local BSOs, as they're called, business support organizations, technical assistance providers, really any organization that has in its mission the policy of supporting small businesses. So they are partners of ours. We work with them to help provide resources. We engage them on policy and advocacy issues, and they're really critical. We are really about giving small businesses a seat at the table. Small businesses really don't have the infrastructure to do that most of the time, the way maybe large businesses do, or labor or other environmental organizations. So we really see it as our role is to provide the forum for them to express their views, share their stories with policymakers. As I said, we also make sure that they're educated about policies. During the pandemic, that was really critical that we educate them about PPP and EIDL loan programs. Kind of make sure that they are connected to well-vetted resources. And as I said, our research kind of underpins all of this. We have 30 team members working from 11 offices across the country. And we're very excited that we are celebrating this fall our 20th anniversary. So three themes that you really need to keep in mind. And you all cover business, so you probably know all of this. Quite frankly, when I started Small Business Majority, even though I'd been an entrepreneur, I didn't know some of these statistics. I was surprised at some of these statistics. So I will tell you, as you probably know, the general public is not that familiar with these statistics. So I just want to reemphasize them. Small businesses account for 99.9% of all businesses. They employ more than 62 million people, nearly half of our private sector workforce. They're responsible for 2/3 of net job growth. And what people really need to understand is 80% of them employ fewer than 10 employees. And in fact, Many of those are self-employed.
Chief, that statistic again.
What?
How many, I missed the first percentage of that,
Of which
what you just said.
62 million workers or work in small business, and then they're responsible for 2/3 of net job growth, and 80% of businesses employ fewer than 10 employees. And that's where we focus. We focus on the smallest businesses. People ask me, I just was at a conference today, oh, what do you consider a small business? Well, no, you can argue that different ways. The SBA says 500 or less, and we think that's a little insane. You could say 100 or less, but we really spend most of our time focused on 25 or less, I would say, and in particular, the really smallest businesses. Quite frankly, they need the most help. They are the largest number of businesses, and so that's where we focus our energies. Really important, as you probably all know, 21 million new businesses have been formed in the last 5 years coming out of the pandemic. And this is a reversal of previous trends. So we are seeing an actual growth in entrepreneurship. Many of those are small, most of them are self-employed people, but they're not all going to survive. Some haven't survived to date. But it's a real change, and it's something that really we need to understand as we focus on small business issues. That's number one, the importance of small business in the economy. Number two, small business issues intersect with virtually every policy issue out there. We're going to talk about a bunch of those. And these are in ways that are surprising to most people. Healthcare, childcare, monopoly issues. So it's really important that we understand that. And you know, I can't tell you how often I get, wow, I never realized that. I never thought about that in the context of XYZ issue. The third thing I want you to remember is that the fortunes of small business, the political leaders throughout everywhere, they really struggle to understand this. And quite frankly, it's surprising, given that polling shows that small business is by far and away the most respected institution in the country. The recent Gallup polling showed that 94% of Americans regard business, have high confidence in small business, 70% of that, great deal or a lot. The military, 62%, great deal and a lot. Organized religion, 36% and a lot. That's obviously a big change in recent years. Organized labor, 29% and a lot. Big business, 15%. But they do beat the last one on the list by 1 point, Congress, 14%. I was wondering, who are those 14%? But anyway. Underscoring these statistics are, as I mentioned, that small businesses are almost 5 times as well regarded as big businesses in our country. And we must remember that the priorities and needs of small businesses are not the same as big businesses. They may intersect at times, that's great, but they are not, they are distinct in many ways. They're often more aligned with consumer issues, and they face different challenges. To put it another way, Microsoft and Main Street do not have exactly the same needs and agenda. So this gives you all an opportunity as reporters to give new insights, uncover new scoops, and in fact, because some of this stuff is still not well enough understood out there, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to dive in, figure this out, and report on things that a lot of people are not reporting on, or certainly not reporting on to the degree that they should. So that is a tremendous opportunity for you, in my humble opinion. Why else is it important to focus on small business? Well, underpinning a lot of stories that get traction is conflict. And we are seeing a fair amount of conflict right now between policies and the needs of small business. There are three areas that weren't really at the top of the list 9 months ago, and they're huge now. They're huge. Tariffs, immigration, particularly mass deportations, and slashing of government programs. Again, these are not issues, these are issues we focus on, tariffs not very much actually, but they have become the biggest issues in the small business community now. And they're killing small business, to be perfectly frank with you. So let's take these one at a time. Tariffs. Tariffs are a legitimate tool for organizing the economy. Every country has them, as we've all learned. But the kind of extreme, large, I would even say draconian levels of tariffs, the fact that they're changing all the time has become, it's really wreaked havoc on small business fortunes out there. It's probably the one issue that we're hearing about the most and that people are really fired up about. Our latest research, I said we'd be talking about our research throughout here, 84% of small business owners are concerned about the impact of tariffs on their business. Small businesses report they've taken on or considering a number of steps, including price increases and delaying business expansion. 60% of businesses note higher costs due to increases in tariffs, with most saying costs have gone up between 10 and 25%. 1/4 of small businesses surveyed import goods from other countries, while nearly a half buy American supplies from entities that use imported products. So this is huge. Really, you're talking about businesses coming out of the pandemic that has thin margins, and this is really creating big problems, and they have no choice in many cases but to pass the costs on to customers or to close their doors even. Large businesses are, one, they have more flexibility to absorb these shifts and changes, and two, they are in a position to lobby for exemptions in a way that small business is not. Now, there is a bill on Capitol Hill now to provide funding and relief for businesses that have been small businesses that have been impacted by tariffs, but they don't have the ability to go and negotiate with the administration on a particular industry or a particular line of products. So, the last thing I want to mention is most small businesses would love to buy domestically. The economy has changed. Supply chains have changed in the last 20 years. And either these products are in short supply and very expensive, or they don't exist at all. And oftentimes, a business is buying from a supplier who's imported products. They don't even have control over that. Those who do and import, they've shifted around some of their sources of supply. But it's really become a problem. All right, that's number one. Number two, immigration and the mass deportations. I'm sure all of you have seen in your communities the impact of these deportations on businesses. It's notable, as I'm sure you know, immigrants are twice as likely as the average citizen, native-born American, to start businesses, start small businesses. And they create 1 in 10 U.S. jobs. So they're really essential to our job creation and our economic growth in the country. This is something that is agreed upon by economists across the entire ideological spectrum, from the chamber to the most liberal, progressive, business-focused organizations. There is very little disagreement about this among most economists and most business leaders out there. Our growth depends upon an ever-growing workforce that has traditionally and continues to be fueled by growth immigrants. And the mass deportation is leaving businesses fearful, their workers fearful, and really driving incredible labor shortages. I just read today that farmers can't get their crops harvested. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but this is really important to understand. We hear about this all the time from small businesses, but to be honest with you, unlike tariffs where they're willing to speak out, it's hard for us to find businesses who are willing to speak on this for obvious reasons. They are scared. They are scared if they speak out, they're going to be targeted. And so it's more of a challenge to advocate on their behalf. Our polling shows that more than 1/3 of entrepreneurs are concerned about mass deportation in their own business. That's more than a third. And almost 70% are concerned about the negative impacts on the economy. So they are aware of what's going on. Just a couple examples. Los Angeles, in our network, Los Angeles restaurant owner told us her entire kitchen staff didn't show up for days out of fear. A Phoenix venue operator said that instead of the record-breaking years get expected. Business is down dramatically because immigrant communities are afraid to hold public events, and their company may not survive. A staffing agency in Philadelphia that helps train Haitian nurses no longer has clients because of this. So it's across the entire economy. So these are just, there are many stories out there. As I said, we get some of them anonymously, but it's harder to relay them when we can't put a face to it. So instead of allowing sort of mass deportations, we need a we've been arguing this for years, as have many other people. We need a comprehensive immigration policy. Small businesses don't want to break the law, and but they need workers. We need, obviously, to lock down the border. We need to deport criminals, not criminals because they lied about their immigration status, but real criminals. But we need a system that provides for varying levels of legal immigration, allowing people to legally work. And it's simple. I mean, small businesses don't want to have to play games or break the law. So anyway, unfortunately, we're going in a different direction. Third issue that's really hitting right now are cuts to government programs. We weren't even, as I said, this was not a big issue a year ago. Many of these government programs are completely bipartisan. The Small Business Administration was founded in the Eisenhower administration, 1953. It's been supported by Democrats and Republicans, and has supported businesses across this country since its inception. The Minority Business Development Agency, the law was signed by President Nixon. So these were not founded as controversial agencies or support mechanisms for businesses. What do we see now? 43% of the SBA staff has been laid off, and they're being asked to handle student loans. We haven't heard too much detail about this, but really, I mean, this is not exactly an agency that has expertise in managing student loans. A whole bunch of their funding for business support organizations have been cut. Women's business centers, the SCORE mentor program, veterans business centers. So that's a huge cut to the SBA. I mentioned the Minority Business Development Agency. It's the only agency dedicated to supporting minority entrepreneurship. It's been reduced to, wait for it, 1 employee. Why is that? Because it was authorized by Congress, so they can't shut the whole thing down, so they have 1 employee there. Despite the fact that MBDA has a strong track record of offering a fantastic ROI. Received almost $70 million in funding for fiscal year 25, and the previous fiscal year with a similar budget it helped businesses access loans totaling more than $1.5 billion. MBDA also leveraged funds from the state Small Business Credit Initiative, and they were authorized, they were the lead in terms of providing funds for technical assistance for businesses, part of the SSBCI, and it was very successful and was moving forward at a clip through 2024. Speaking of State Small Business Credit Initiative, SSBCI, this was actually something that was originally came out of the Great Recession, and the Obama administration started, incredibly successful in providing funding for equity and debt capital products with a 10-to-1 leverage ratio, meaning that for every $1 million that was put in, $10 million in private financing was provided. That it has had that has been supported by bipartisan level. All the money has been allocated. Not only has it been authorized by Congress, it's been allocated, and yet they're living in deathly fear that they won't be able to distribute about half of the money that's still remaining. And this has been a successful program. Republican governors have loved it. They're able to launch programs. They don't have to say the money came from Washington, and everyone's happy. So the last thing I want to mention about a federal program, and this is what is so, I hate to say it, infuriating. The Community Development Finance Institutions, the CDFI fund, completely supported by bipartisanship. they just announced, the administration just announced they were going to cut off all funding. There's been a strong bipartisan pushback. There's something known as the CDFI caucus in Congress. 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans sent a letter. Secretary Bessent, Treasury Secretary Bessent is in favor of it, but OMB Director Vogt wants to cut it. And this is money going to CDFIs that are providing capital for housing, but also for small businesses with the greatest need. They provide the technical assistance that goes along with it. And as I said, it's had bipartisan support. You haven't seen too much of that on Capitol Hill, but to get a letter signed by 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats, that does say something. So a couple of research points on this. Needless to say, 2/3 of small businesses in our polling are opposed to these cuts, and 79% of entrepreneurs are really worried about the SBA's flagship 7A program. All right, those are the three sort of big conflict issues that are new this year. Then we have other issues, and I'm not going to cover all of them, but many of them where small business issues intersect. The first is healthcare, and we actually cut our teeth and launched ourselves on the back of initially state healthcare reform programs, including in California, and then on the lead up to the ACA. And this is research that we've been seeing consistently for years. Small businesses are unbelievably impacted by rising healthcare costs for them and their employees. As we see recently, insurance premiums have increased by 78%. Deductibles, copays, prescription drug copays have all gone up. And unfortunately, businesses are having to make tough choices. Now, the level of support, the level of businesses providing healthcare through the business is going down. There is the option of the exchange. We'll get to that in a second. But on the exchanges, but that is something that continues to be a huge issue. A couple other statistics here. 29% of businesses in our most recent polling have cut benefits. Nearly half have moved to an insurance plan offering more limited coverage. And 1/4 of these businesses have dropped healthcare coverage altogether. So we're at a crossroads when it comes to funding for healthcare. I'm going to just focus on two issues here. One is, and again, this is where people don't think of it as a small business issue, Medicaid. The cuts to Medicaid in the one big, beautiful bill, they don't go into effect until 2027, but they are going to wreak havoc. Over 7 million small business owners and employees are on Medicaid, and 1/3 of all people enrolled in Medicaid have some connection either through their own employment or through a family member's employment to the Medicaid program. So if these stay, it's going to have a huge negative impact on small businesses. No surprise, 76% of small business owners in our polling opposed these cuts to Medicaid, while only 12% supported them. It's a ratio of more than 6 to 1. There's more. So right now, you may be aware, one of the biggest fights on Capitol Hill is what's called the extended premium tax credits. The premium tax credits are the credits you can get based on income to buy into the exchange, and they were expanded during the pandemic. And that expansion has allowed them to cover a lot of small business owners and small business employees that weren't covered, or at least give support, and give an off-ramp for businesses and their employees where the business isn't offering anymore. So that's what's going on here. In 2024, a record almost 20 million people qualified for premium tax credits, and 21 million people signed up for ACA marketplace coverage. So what's going on is it's actually a big issue right now, and the Democrats are threatening to not vote for a continuing resolution for the 2026 budget unless the Republicans, or at least enough Republicans, come to the table and say they're going to increase these expanded premium tax credits run out at the end of this year. I should have pointed that out. So this isn't like Medicaid, which is another year down the road. This is a here and now issue. And it's a big small business issue, and we've been involved in a whole bunch of meetings and events on Capitol Hill. And quite frankly, Republicans are sweating quite a bit about this, because if these go away, it's going to not be a great thing for them as they head into the 2026 midterms. Needless to say, 70% of small businesses in our research support extending these credits. So there's a lot of other healthcare issues, but those are the Medicaid and the premium tax credits are huge. Child care. You wouldn't think that was a small business issue. It's estimated the U.S. economy loses $122 billion a year on childcare due to childcare challenges. Businesses lose an average of over $1,600 a year per working parent because of insufficient access to childcare. These financial losses are no doubt felt by the smallest businesses, and they simply can't afford to lose this kind of money and this kind of productivity in their businesses. So our research, a majority of small businesses agree the lack of access to affordable, high-quality healthcare, childcare for their own children created an impediment for them to start their businesses. There were over half who said that, and same percentage to grow their business. Their own childcare issues include taking out substantial time away from the business, losing out on business opportunities, need to hire additional help, and even shutting down their own business. For their employees, the issues are lower productivity, inability to operate longer hours. These are all percentages we picked up on our polling of issues that were impacting small businesses. Lost revenue or earnings, work absences, employee resignations, candidates not accepting jobs, and so forth. And again, small businesses are often competing for employees with larger businesses who can actually help provide coverage that small businesses can't. So bottom line is 60% of businesses in our polling feel that employees' childcare issues have negatively affected their business. And again, it's another opportunity to look at an issue that isn't just small business, but has a strong small business component to it and cover it on that basis. So these issues about portable healthcare, childcare, other benefits, these are even more important now, as I mentioned, with the 21 million new businesses, many of whom are self-employed. And in fact, the whole self-employed economy is poorly understood. I've had, and I will not name names, a very senior official in an administration, economic official, very senior, tell me that,
Go ahead.
well, tell me that self-employed people don't create jobs. Really? I think they create their own jobs, and they may grow to where they will actually create more jobs. It's just a poorly understood and poorly appreciated, huge sector of our economy. We're going to see more and more Americans choosing this path. Flexibility, desire to be their own boss, ability to use technology in ways they couldn't use it before. And so this is a hugely overlooked area, and we need to focus on it and make sure that we're taking care of their needs. And again, a lot of their needs intersect with needs of ordinary consumers, but not well understood that it's actually impacting our economy. Another big central issue for us is access to capital. We've already talked about the cuts to SBA, SSBCI, and BDA, but businesses need capital. Not all businesses, but many businesses do. In the last year, from our polling, over half of businesses have taken steps to access funding or capital. They've pursued traditional bank loans, grants, SBA loans, loans from CDFIs or nonprofit lenders, venture equity capital, and crowdfunding. Of the entrepreneurs that pursued funding for their business, only 1/3 were able to secure what they needed. Among those who were funded, more than 4 in 10 reported it was only partially met their needs. Only around 1/3 received sufficient, as I said, received sufficient funding. So what happens? Well, you need money. I ran a business. There were times when I didn't know if I could make payroll. It's awfully tempting. Somebody's dangling money out there for you, and there's a lot of that out there. You go online looking for quick money as a business owner. There's money out there for sure. But it comes with a huge catch. It ends up, first of all, the rates and the terms are not properly disclosed in these predatory loans. Interest rates are so high that businesses may actually have to go out of business. It doesn't matter. The people making the loan get their money. They don't care if the business sticks around. They've gotten their money. They move on. Unlike consumer loans, small business loans are not covered with the same protections around disclosure of rates, of APR. And so this is a huge loophole because, again, all these businesses, they have to put their personal collateral up. They have to put their home up. They have to put all their assets up sometimes. So to not treat it as a consumer loan and not give them the same protections is crazy. And in many of these cases, the fees that are added on can raise interest rates as high as, effective interest rates as high as 350%. As I said, in many cases, the business is just going out of business. All of this is perfectly legal. So all we're asking for initially is disclosure. Provide the same disclosure requirements for consumer loans for small business loans. And we've succeeded in a few states, not enough. New York, California, Illinois, we've come close. But we've tried to do this on the federal level. You would think this was a bipartisan issue. And of course, some Republicans on Capitol Hill used to be in support of these sorts of disclosure requirements, although not this specific one. And it's just, we haven't been able to turn it into something. 87%, in our research, 87% of small businesses support some kind of truth in lending bill for small businesses. Only 1% said they were opposed to that. So this is a huge problem. And I'm sympathetic because, quite frankly, I took a few loans I probably shouldn't have taken. So when your back's up against the wall and you're trying to keep your business afloat, this is reality. Just a couple other issues here. I mentioned sort of the difference between big and small businesses. And our entire economic system is indeed, I'm trying to sound inflammatory here, but it is skewed toward the benefits for big businesses. And we do have issues in promoting a fair competition where all small businesses are asking for is a level playing field. Again, our research, 56% of businesses say one or more large companies dominate their industry. Same percentage agree with the statement, large companies have an unfair advantage in my industry or line of work. Small businesses favor a number of policies to make it easier for them to compete. 84% support full disclosure. 80% favor enforcing existing antitrust laws, protecting small businesses against anti-competitive practices. 76% specific prohibitions on certain predatory lending practices. Under the Biden administration, and by the way, a lot of these laws were moribund under both Democratic and Republican administrations. I don't want to single out one party or the other. It was, for the last 30, 40 years, the antitrust enforcement, fair competition enforcement has been very, very slow. Federal Trade Commission under the Biden administration did take some steps in this direction. They passed a rule banning non-compete agreements, most non-compete agreements. I have to say, shouldn't be a partisan issue. There are 3 states that have non-compete bans: California, Oklahoma, and North Dakota. That is a nice range of bipartisan blue and red there. So it's not just blue states or blue folks that have done that. They took steps to enforce something called the Robinson Patent Law, which is a New Deal era law that prevents price discrimination. We have stories all the time of businesses who are paying double for their supplies what their big competitors are paying, and it's not legal under Robinson Patent. It has not been properly enforced. And they've actually started examining a whole area of unfair franchise agreements. So they didn't end up passing a rule in that regard. What's interesting about this issue is there's actually bipartisan, kind of populist bipartisan support for some of this. You have some really interesting bedfellows. You had Bernie Sanders and Senator Klobuchar on one side of this issue, and you had Josh Hawley and Mike Lee, very strong members of the Senate equivalent of the Freedom Caucus, agreeing. Josh Hawley even went so far as to praise Lena Khan, the former head of the FTC. So there's an opportunity, I think, to get something done here, because this is not just a Democratic issue. The Trump administration has pulled back. They did pull back on the non-compete rule, but they have indicated that they're open to looking at some solutions to this. So it's not going to be quite what the last administration did, but they are open to that. All right, the final issue I wanted to talk about, which was in the news a fair amount over the summer, is tax policy. So just a couple of statistics from our polling here. Sorry, hitting with the polling. Over 80% believe that our tax system favors the largest corporations over small businesses, and the large corporations don't pay their fair share of taxes. One thing I want to add here is that polling we've done over the last 20 years shows that small businesses actually, they're not opposed to government intervention, as is often the case. I mean, nobody likes regulations, obviously, and there needs to be fair and balanced regulation. They think the government's in collusion with big business against them. So that's their concern. There are many provisions of this summer's One Big Beautiful Bill. We've already discussed one of them, the cuts to Medicaid. So I'm just going to talk about one more. I mean, there were so many tax provisions in there. This is what's called the pass-through deduction. Now, you may be familiar with this. 199A is what's referred to sometimes. This enables pass-through entities, of which most small businesses pass through their profits and are taxed at the personal level, to deduct 20% of their profits, of their business profits, from their personal income tax. It sounds great, right? Well, who would be opposed to that? The problem is, when you do the math and you look at the data, 73% of the benefit has gone to 5% of the pass-through entities. So it's a combination of the tax rate being higher for those entities, and so the tax rate being higher, and the fact that they have more revenue. So somebody will say, well, sure. I was testified in Congress a couple of years ago, and I had a senator say to me, well, that's crazy. Of course the bigger businesses should get more. And my response was, yeah, you don't have to design it that way. You can design it any way you want. So we came up with a proposal that said, let's do bottom up instead of top down. Let's give we didn't want to eliminate the pass-through deduction. We wanted to say, take the first 25%, first 25,000, and you can deduct it. And then, you have a cutoff. So what you're doing is you're benefiting the businesses who need the benefit the most. They don't, you're not benefiting, they're getting trickle down right now. There's a statistic in here somewhere, I want to make sure I have this right, that businesses in the highest earning businesses had average deduction of over $1 million, and the smallest businesses with incomes below $100,000 took home an average of just under $2,000. So again, you can design any law any way you want, and you can say, we really want to help the smallest businesses here. And so that was something that unfortunately did not go through. They just passed it as it had always been. Again, 74% of businesses we polled, and by the way, our polling is usually plurality Republican, heavy independent. So these polls we take are not, they're not skewed toward one party or the other. And in fact, they lean, the respondents lean in some cases slightly Republican. So this is the reason we exist, is to give voice to Main Street small businesses on these and other issues. As I said, most small businesses don't have the resources to sort of lobby and advocate on their own. And in some cases, business organizations out there still conflate the needs of bigger businesses with smaller businesses. So we got a long ways to go to level the playing field. And we need, quite frankly, your help in getting the word out there. And just the facts. As I've tried to make this presentation, as I do all the time, these are the facts. This is not ideological. This is, this is a part of our economy that is so important. So many lives are connected to it. It intersects with all these issues. Let's support it. And one thing I forgot to mention, what's so important to our work, I mentioned that folks talking about terrorists not wanting to talk about immigration. The stories are so important. I was just at a conference today, and small business owners were telling their stories about what they're experiencing. That is way more powerful. So a major thing that we do, my colleague Simon Brown here, our PR director, spends a lot of time on this, is connecting business owners with the media, with the press. And more, and this is fine with me, the reporters are more interested in talking to the business owners and finding out what they're doing than talking to me, and that's great. So with that, I will thank you again, and happy to answer any questions you have.
I'm going to start just with one quick question. We had two small business owners here earlier this morning who made no bones about how difficult the environment is out there. And you just referenced a number of small business owners are telling the same story. When does that translate into major political power? And is there, you've been around the Hill long enough, is there a recognition, or is there just a lack of recognizing what's in front of them at this point in terms of, you know, what the political implications of this environment might be?
I mean, it's an excellent question. You would think, you know, given the level of support and confidence in business across the country, this would be recognized. Small businesses don't have the organized political power that a lot of other groups have. And that's, across the spectrum: labor, environment, civil rights, big business, and they just don't have that. And we have focused to date on advocacy federally and in the states. As I said, we have 11 offices across the country. And we have moved the needle in the states and at different times on the Hill. I think we had a major impact on helping to get the ACA passed, but they're not organized politically. And I would say that is a weakness, and that is something that I'm looking at very carefully on how we might help to facilitate that, particularly at a time when our political system is a bit jumbled and some folks are walking around in the wilderness. It might be an opportunity to do that, but it has been difficult to get some of these issues really the attention. As I said, we've been more successful at the state level over time, but just being there and talking to legislators and the media has been helpful. But I think small business in general, we collectively need to figure out a way to increase their political power.
Somebody else? Marlon Hyde, WAB News in Atlanta.
We have an office in Atlanta.
All right, perfect. We got to
I'll
talk.
connect you with our director.
No, but what I'm thinking about is a lot of the small businesses that I've spoken to over the course of this year, they always try to veer away when I ask about potentially closing, and it's not really, again, it's not a thought that they want to think about too often. But in your experience with the businesses that you represent, that you speak to, that you interact with, how real, or again, how many of them are thinking about or on the verge of closing?
Well, business owners are by nature greedy. They wouldn't have done this in the first place. They got to be a little crazy to do it. And the last thing they want to think about is closing down. From what we can tell in our research and anecdotally, I would say a quarter of them are very concerned. But to your point, they're not likely to share that with a reporter. So that's where you're running into some issues there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's a real fear, but it's the last thing a business owner really wants to admit to.
Hi, Tanya Babar with CT Insider in Connecticut. You had mentioned something, I just had missed it. You were talking about businesses paying double for their supplies where, as opposed to big chains. You had mentioned a law, I missed it. I was wondering if you could repeat explaining that, if that's okay?
It's called the Robinson-Patman Act. It was passed in the 1930s during the New Deal, and it has not been well enforced in recent years. It basically forbids the suppliers from charging different rates depending on simply the size of their customers. So.
Sorry. If I could just ask a quick follow-up, what do you mean by not well enforced? Could you expand on?
It hasn't been, I mean, it hasn't been, there's not a private right of action right now, so it would have to be enforced by government. And as I said, government under both Democratic and Republican administrations has not enforced a lot of anti-monopoly fair competition laws over the last 40 years, dating back to the 80s.
Thank you.
All right, hi there. My name is De'Ara J. Towns. I'm with the Sand Hills News down in central North Carolina. My question is regarding SNAP benefits. I know that because of the big beautiful bill, there are cuts coming, and mainly I want to know what's that impact between like grocery stores, you know, farmers and so forth. And then the follow-up is the distribution of those benefits, is it dependent upon the federal fiscal schedule? Because if so, the fiscal year starts 2026, which means these cuts would happen on October 1st. I'm not sure if you would have that information, but trying to work on a story to help, you know, let folks know when should they expect cuts to their SNAP benefits.
We've probably not covered the SNAP stuff as much as we should have. Simon, jump in here if I'm missing something that we've done. But yes, I mean, impacting both the stores who are going to lose revenue, but also impacting the lives of the people who are not only spending money at the stores, they're spending money elsewhere, and no doubt have to cut back elsewhere if they don't have the support to buy food. So it's just another example of a program you don't think of as a small business issue and I'd be happy to try to get some more information for you. That I don't have all the stats on the top of my head, but there were a lot of provisions of the one big beautiful bill that we chose to focus on a few. But yeah, I mean, it's analogous to the Medicaid situation.
I'm curious, with a lot of the statistics you're citing, what is generally the sample size that you're looking at?
It ranges, I'd say on our polls, it's between 300 and 500 nationally. We like to get 500, don't always get it. We also do some surveys of our network, and we recognize those are not scientific because our network is made up, but we also want to get a sense of the folks who are connected to us. But the polling, it's about 300 to 500. We have had a few that are higher. Sometimes we'll do an oversample of like 100 in certain states, but the margin of error is usually about plus or minus 4 to 5%. Sorry.
Hi, Omar Mohammed from the Boston Globe. I have a question about childcare costs. You talked about that being one of the critical issues that your members are facing. I was just curious about how businesses are navigating that, especially since for most of your members, you know, they seem to be solo entrepreneurs who have to grapple with it.
Yeah, I mean, big businesses in many cases are offering childcare. And there's actually a bill in Congress that would provide tax credits to businesses that offer health care, which is not something, that provide childcare, not something a small business can do. So they don't have that option. Basically, they end up having to navigate a workforce, and even in many cases their own lives, that are it's just an added burden. I gave some of the statistics we got from our polling about how businesses and their employees are responding to this, but it's disruptive, and in some cases they're not able to survive. In some cases the child care providers are not able to survive. A lot of them are small businesses themselves. So I don't have a great answer for you because there isn't sort of a magic bullet. most developed countries around the world have a more robust system for childcare. And again, it's an economic benefit. It's not just because they're being nice. You know, this is, if you're going to have an economy where, in many cases, both partners are working, you're going to need to have a system of childcare that is makes it affordable for people to work and participate in the economy. So I don't, but I think I live with some. They've cut back hours. They've had to, you know, juggle shifts. In some cases, you know, they haven't been able to hire someone. They have to spend longer hiring. So it isn't that they have any magic bullet solution. It's that it's how are they ducking and weaving from all the things that are being thrown at them. It's just one more set of challenges that a small business owner faces.
I'm just curious if they're like, so innovative. I mean, unfortunately, it is a fact of life in the U.S. where that's a huge challenge. I'm just curious, are there kind of like innovative way where folks are having, because they have to figure it out, that, you know, maybe we could write about? That's what I'm
Yeah, that's a
trying
good.
to see.
I think some are maybe perhaps forming co-ops, but we haven't heard a lot about that. Because again, that's challenging to manage and figure out. I don't have a lot of stories that are, you know, there were expanded support for childcare that ended a year ago, October. A year ago? I think it was a year ago, not 2 years ago, and did not get the Democrats were 100% in favor of continuing the additional support. It was pandemic level again. The argument on the other side was, well, pandemic's over. Why do we have to keep doing this? And that actually kept the child care costs down and the availability of providers higher. So we can get back to you and see if there's any, there's folks on the team who work on child care more than I do, so we'll get back to you on that.
Hi, my name is Matt Glowicki. I write for the Courier-Journal newspaper in Louisville, Kentucky. Wanted to ask you your thoughts and what you're hearing from your members on two different topics, one of which is the no tax on tips. No tax on tips provision, and any implementation or concerns that you're hearing. And then earlier this afternoon, we had a session on AI and concerns that small business owners might have about that or opportunities there. Curious what you're hearing on that front.
Well, on the tips, and we haven't delved into the issue in detail. It's, as I think you all know, it's not as pristine, a policy as it was sold. And there's certain limits, and it's definitely created, like in restaurants, it's created friction between the servers and the kitchen, the folks in the kitchen who are not being tipped. We haven't polled on this, so I'm sort of speaking personally, income is income. I mean, there's not really an economic reason to say this kind of income should be taxed and this kind of income should not be taxed. And particularly because it only impacts certain people working in certain industries, and there's no real reason to do that. We have heard that it's been disruptive, so I don't have a lot more to offer than that. The AI, you use the two words that are important: opportunity and concern. Absolutely, and we did do some polling on this. I didn't include it in here because there's not a lot of policy work going on now, but hopefully there will be. Small business owners really want to know better. I mean, first of all, they're already using AI. They want to be trained better. They want more resources to help them use AI effectively. There's no question that AI can be a huge benefit. Marketing, inventory, managing the whole business, no question about that. But consistent with my comments about the concern about the big businesses dominating the economy, we have seen in this research we did see that small businesses are very concerned that the big guys and gals are going to dominate. They're going to use it more powerfully, more effectively, and exacerbate the lack of a level playing field. So yes, opportunities for sure, but we, like so many other policies, we need rules of the road, and they're that is an issue we're going to be getting involved in even more. And as I said, we did some initial research on it.
Hi, Ashley Murray from States Newsroom. I'm wondering about retirement savings infrastructure and small business owners, particularly like, the 10 employee or under 1 employee. Someone in my family who's approaching retirement age has been a sole proprietor.
Oh, imagine that.
And let's just say the retirement planning has been underwhelming. So I'm just, that
I was an
makes,
entrepreneur, so imagine that.
that makes me think, wonder how widespread of a problem this is, or, is it just like a financial literacy problem? And, people who are educated all have SEP IRAs. Like, what are the big issues here that you're seeing?
It's an issue that we've dealt with. So I'm going to say a couple things about it. It is a problem. It is a big problem individually and also macroeconomically. The gap that exists out there. I will tell you, there are a couple solutions. What was it, 2.0, the big retirement bill that passed 2 years ago. Yeah, what was the name? I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, it actually did provide a bit of an opportunity for, expanded the opportunity to save for retirement. It gave credits to businesses that are offering, expanding their retirement programs. And in this number of states, I'd say it's like 15, 20 states now have passed secure choice programs where the state has come in and is basically managing a retirement program. I mean, it's still private retirement insurance, but they're managing the platform, and in many cases have required businesses, in some cases all businesses, some cases above 5 employees, some cases above 25 employees, to require them to offer this on an opt-out basis, which is opt-out under research shows that if it's opt-out, you're more likely to stick with it. So great. I'm actually good friends with the former state treasurer of Oregon, who was the lead, the person who actually, I don't know if anybody from Oregon here, but I'll put in a plug for him. He's now the Secretary of State. He was the lead in coming up with this kind of a state program. So that is an option. There's a big but here, though. Of all of the issues that we deal with, getting small business owners fired up about this is at the bottom of the list. We really struggled. We got funded to work on this issue. All these state initiatives that were in Illinois, in California, and other states that we worked on, we then went out and tried to get people to come to webinars, seminars, and get them information. It was like pulling teeth. With everything that's going on for small business that we just talked about, the current crises and certainly all the other stuff, taxes, healthcare, access to capital, it has been, and you alluded to this, it has been bottom of the list, and too many small business owners, and I was guilty of this myself, just kind of ignored it as it was moving along. So it is politically challenging, even though economically it's hugely important.
Yeah, even though like Social Security is going to be insolvent,
Pardon?
and like the Social Security Trust Fund is going to be insolvent in like a decade or so, that does not.
It's really hard
light
to
a fire.
get people in general, including small business owners, fired up about something that's going to maybe happen in 10 years. I'm not saying it's not important. And I would say we spent 4 or 5 years heavily involved in this work, and quite frankly, we're funded to do so. And we struggled. We struggled.
Last two.
Hi, I'm Olivia Evans at the Courier-Journal in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm wondering, when you say the self-employed economy, are you considering or factoring in contract workers, freelancers, gig workers in that? And regardless of if you do count them into how you identify that, what influence or impact are you seeing those workers have on small businesses, and how are small businesses impacting and influencing that category of workers?
Your first question was the small business economy. That was the beginning of your question. How do we define that?
The self-employed
Oh, the
economy.
self-employed, yeah. It does include all of those. However, we've tried to stay away from the gig economy because first of all, there's people who are misclassified and should be employees, no question about that. On the other side, there are people who start legitimate businesses and they're undervalued. And I will say some folks on the left say that's not good, they're being abused. When you want to start a flower shop, you're not being abused. There's no, you don't have to be a W-2 employee. So in between that, you've got a range of people. And the gig economy, it got so caught up with Uber and Lyft, it's tough. I mean, in many ways, self-employed are both workers, and my point about the person saying they don't employ people, they're both workers and businesses. We choose to look at them as businesses. We recognize their needs, though, are like any other worker, and we don't think there should be a discrimination against them because they're running legitimate, I don't mean misclassified, I mean legitimate small businesses, legitimate solo businesses. And we look for a system where they can have access to health care, childcare, paid leave, and other programs where it's honored. Not everybody agrees with this on the left, quite frankly. They think, no, they're being abused, they shouldn't be. So when we talk about small business economy, the self-employed economy, we do include generally those people, but we kind of stay away from the Uber Lyft sort of fights. There's kind of a blurred line in the center there, and we've chosen to not go head to head on, coming up with a bright line, other than you shouldn't misclassify people. I think the other part was how do small business owners themselves use. My business, I didn't first hire employees, I hired some contractors and freelancers to help me when I got going. It was probably a year or two before I actually hired a W-2 employee. That's very common. And again, what we hear from small business owners, they want that flexibility. They don't want to feel they have to hire a W-2 employee. They want to know, well, there's legitimate freelancer out there who can help me, 20% of the time, 50% of the time, whatever it is. Now, if they come and they're working for you 100% of the time, they're probably really an employee. So that is a big need, and that is definitely one that where small businesses want the flexibility to be able to hire contractors.
Hello, I'm back here. My name is Jasmine Robinson. I'm a reporter for Verite News in New Orleans. And my question is kind of similar to that one on the topic of the self-employed workforce. I do a lot of reporting about self-employed folks who sort of operate in what some people would call the underground economy in New Orleans. So like we're talking like street vendors, street artists, street performers, musicians, essentially anyone like making a living, but they're not necessarily like paying taxes on it. I guess that's how I sort of like delineate like a legitimized business self-employed person like a street vendor or something along those lines. So I'm curious, can you talk about just your thoughts on that sort of like underground economy, but also like, are there any particular hurdles for people in the underground economy to legitimizing their business?
Yeah, absolutely. That is actually, the economy you're describing, that is a huge part of the economy. And it's one, quite frankly, our bias is we want to support those people. If you're going to go out and you want to, have a food truck or sell food from your home, quite frankly, which is not allowed in a lot of states, we got the law passed in California to allow it, that's great. It's all what I was saying. We encourage people to go out, make their own way, be their own boss, control their lives. Now, we also encourage people to pay taxes. So, we would never advocate it's okay to do that. What these folks need is support. They need resources. They need access to resources, which is very hard to get in under-resourced communities, whether that's urban, whether that's rural. So that's the solution, is to get them resources, get them educated. You really need to pay taxes. Oh, you hired somebody? Not a lot of these people don't hire anyone, but you got to pay a minimum wage. I mean, so that's So it's a combination of resources and educating them, but we absolutely, you're absolutely right, that is a huge part of our economy, again, not well understood. You know, I just want to say one thing about this economy we're talking about, the self-employed, and people don't understand it. We come into contact with these people and we do business with these people every day. Every legislator, every member of the administration, all of us. This is like, we don't even think about it. These are people who are part of our lives. So, yeah, so that is a big part of the economy.
Well, I want to thank you all for your great questions, and John especially for the great message and commitment of your time today on an ugly day to boot.
I'm going to put in one plug, and Simon will kill me, but Simon is a resource for those of you who are covering these stories in your respective areas. And we've got offices around the country, and we've got small business owners in every state. Sorry, Simon. So, so we welcome. This is, you know, we welcome. We're here to help you and provide you with information and provide you with support, provide you with access to research and small business owner voices. So, please think of us that way. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.